Let's go back to the first COVID lockdown. Spring 2020. Like many people, my professional and social life had temporarily contracted to take place almost wholly on landscape-oriented rectangular screens in my living room. By law, nobody could leave their homes to socialize with each other in the places that they would typically do so in. This led to a surge in interest for online spaces where community was possible and already gathering. New DJ Ian Joliet joined us to run his social distancing dance parties on Saturday night. TTNS started seeing some unexpectedly big audience spikes too, and a nightclub in a browser was born. We added a Zoom feature to the website, creating what was my first experience of a distributed dance floor. Our visitors started dressing up for a night in and to dance, alone, together. By day, I was a frontline educational technologist in my living room, playing my part in helping my institution continue to function during the biggest professional crisis any of us had faced in living memory. By night, I was running a sudden hit online nightclub, as people around the world who could no longer leave their homes found themselves roaming around online and settling on TTNS as one of the releases from all the pressures of the bizarre circumstances that we all found ourselves in. The Association for Learning Technology, or ALT for short, is the UK's leading professional membership body for learning technologists like myself. ALT were one of the organizations that others turned to for advice on how to run participative and engaging conferences online. They naturally couldn't run their annual flagship online conference, ALTc, that year either, so they put together an online summer summit instead. This would allow us learning technologists to gather together, share stories, and let off steam, now that the pivot to online had forced many of our institutions to finally understand the work that we did. As I sat in my house alone, I pondered the two online communities that I engaged with and socialized amongst, TTNS and ALT. Can I somehow bring the two of these together? I asked myself. What I'd seen working with TTNS could surely apply in professional contexts too, albeit in different ways. After all, one of the questions that many of us were struggling with at the time was how to encourage engagement in fully online educational contexts. This is the point where I chose to cross the streams and collapse the strict boundaries I'd long maintained between what I did at work and what I did outside of work. I pitched the idea of a radio component to the Summer Summit to add something extra and interactive to the online event. ALT were responsive, so I put the call out for expressions of interest from the new learning technology community and ended up with some new DJs for the show. On the Thursday night after the conference had drawn to a close, two sectoral colleagues I'd recruited made their radio debuts, and one with some prior radio experience played on TTNS for the first time. I also played a set, and ALTc Radio was born. It worked well enough to repeat the experiment over a handful more of the online ALTc events that continued, while the UK shimmied in and out of varying COVID lockdowns. By 2022, ALT was tentatively stepping into the precarious world of running a conference in a hybrid way, and TTNS remained along for the journey, but still only online at this point. It also ended up as one of the more memorable times I've ever spent on the radio. It was the day that the death of Queen Elizabeth was announced. I had to figure out at pretty short notice whether our little internet radio station had any broadcast obligations in the circumstances for a response to the moment, Internet radio being global, and I hope there's no profound royalists in the room for the next slide, we concluded that we didn't and that the show must go on. So we ended up soundtracking our delegates' journeys home, or their moments of switching off from work, anyway. It's not out of the question that one of the TTNS DJs did put a certain Sex Pistols track on that night. I couldn't possibly say at this point in time. Alt CEO Maren Deepwell, I bumped into her at a Sectoral event in early 2023. And she asked me if I'd be up for bringing the whole ALTc Radio experience to the next in-person conference. The difference this time would be that it would be a more substantial part of the overall program, rather than just an after event. It was also Alt's 30th anniversary as an organization, so it would be a special event. I jumped at the chance and set to work scaling up ALTc Radio for a full selection of parallel programming, a conference fringe on the radio. I'd end up bumping up operations from 4 to 30 hours of radio programming. The 2023 conference was held on site at the University of Warwick. And by day, they provided a glass-fronted booth for the station amidst the exhibition stands, giving us an actual pop-up radio station rather than us just being a bunch of DJs broadcasting from their homes. The program consisted of a mix of on-site music sets from the booth, live online ones beamed into the venue and out on the web, pre-recorded shows including various podcasts as well, and all 3 keynotes, which were live streamed on YouTube, were fed into the overall radio mix as well. The roster included well-known figures from the learning technology community who were making their radio debuts. We had a handful of new voices and some of the existing TTNS DJs that had come in via previous iterations of ALTc Radio. It felt somewhat like the breaking of a new medium. We came back to Manchester in 2024. The radio component returned, having succeeded with the proof of concept. We went up to 43 hours of original radio programming and had 20 new DJs from the learning technology community sharing their practice and playing their choices of songs to a distributed audience of their peers. Last year in Glasgow was our 3rd consecutive year. We went up to 48 hours, and I even had a co-host that year. ALTc Radio has acted as a vehicle for bringing a musical layer to this particular professional community. One of the things that surprised me most about this strange new medium of conference radio was the impact of introducing music as part of the sensory mix of a conference environment. It was noticeable in Warwick to see some of the delegates arrive at the venue with a spring in their step as they heard a song that they liked when they walked through the door. As a rule, music in conferences is rare and is usually only played in discrete areas or deployed as filler when it is included. Music, however, can bring joy, can create nostalgia, can generate rhythm and forge community. Latter aside, not typically things that we tend to associate with a conference. And I'm going to jump to a quote from one of the speakers who told us that, this is Joe Elliott from Queen Mary, University of London, who told us that being part of the radio program allowed me to still feel part of the conference. The conversational nature of radio is ideal for talking about teaching and learning. And unlike with a podcast, you knew people were listening live. So you've listened to my stories today, and I thank you for your ears and your attention. Just to conclude, does any of this matter? And if so, why? Are there any useful lessons that can come from TTNS and ALTc Radio in a challenging and ever-changing world? Well, I think as the development of ALTc Radio has shown, the principles that were applied to the growth of TTNS for building genuine community in online spaces, openness, authenticity, creative freedom, human connection, can also be applied in unexpected professional contexts to solve real engagement problems and enhance activities in unexpected ways. More importantly, perhaps the digital world has become a more difficult place to be in recent times. I believe that community is one of the mitigations for that. And of course, it also is in so many IRL contexts too. In the next section, I take you back to when I was a bit more hopeful about digital technologies. Because we're at 3 o'clock, I'll skip through these. But suffice to say that the internet gave me and millions of other people at the time freedoms that I would never have had and connections I would likely never have made. But the Wild West nature and the wide open spaces of the early web would soon start getting not only tamed, but also locked down, monopolized, and in today's terminology, increasingly enshittified, despite the layers of open principles and protocols that the internet had been established with. The World Wide Web has increasingly become a more enclosed space, stalked by giant corporations far bigger than the industrial monopolists of the earlier age ever managed to become. Social media has brought us a new world of echo chambers, doom scrolling, and algorithmic surveillance. Never mind generative AI. One of the core features of the internet is that it has always changed, always evolved, and always seen new players and platforms rise and fall. However, in my view, we forget at our peril the lessons that emancipatory digital freedoms, otherwise impossible connections across borders, and the positive affordances of becoming somebody else online that have characterized earlier phases of the web. Community is, I think, one of those bulwarks against what the place once known as cyberspace has come to resemble, and a way to ensure it continues to be a place worth giving our attentions to. I'll end today's talk with a short list of some of the lessons that I've learned as principles in nurturing these digital communities that people actually care about. As we can see on the screen, these include openness, providing somewhere worth being part of, tasking people with what suits them, helping each other, providing a regular rhythm to activities, platforming for diversity, keeping it simple, providing multiple modes of interaction, being prepared for challenging and change, and most importantly, don't forget to meet in person sometimes. I'll end it there. Thank you very much.